Yeah, you know, if you're doing the purge, you want better materials, you're probably going to have to put all the time into harvesting all those materials and crafting them and so on. That's not really my kind of thing. I'm much more of a gamer that enjoys adventuring and combat and stories. And although I do enjoy many elements in survival games, I don't necessarily want to do all the harvesting. It's kind of a grind, in my opinion. So, what I'm kind of showing here is a base that I was able to put together with some of the basic materials. And this is, you can see here, I'm not playing single player in creative mode or anything to kind of cheat. I actually did build out this base in normal single player mode. I just was curious how could I build it most efficiently, and so what I want to do here is just kind of show you, you know, I really don't have spent many points on the knowledge for all the fancy building styles, and so I've just basically built this base out of sandstone and flotsam. And because this is more of a desert area, I didn't think that some of these things, like these roofs with the cloth on them, I didn't think that was entirely right. Like, a lot of these pieces in flotsam look like they are made from a shipwreck, materials out of a shipwreck. So I kind of didn't really think that was appropriate in a more of a desert biome. You know, it doesn't really look right that, like, how in the heck would you find shipwrecked materials, you know, in the middle of a desert? But nonetheless, there are some of the materials out of flotsam that I do think make a nice combination with a basic sandstone. And so you'll see those here, like the pillars, and these ramps, which I've actually used as kind of a roof, as opposed to using a more expensive roof. And I'm not really a huge fan of the hay looking, the thatched roofs. So not really a fan of that. I kind of want to do something different, and by using the pillars and those ramps, and then along with the sandstone, that color of wood from flotsam blends nicely with these little wooden posts in the fence, in the fencing. So it kind of looks nice and unified like that. But another thing that I will say about it is, then of course you can see how I use the columns to break up the facade, to make it look a little more interesting rather than have just one giant flat surface. And then the top floor, of course, being a little bit a different size than the bottom floor. That helps to make it more visually interesting too. Now, one of the other things that I like to balance my base builds with is the efficiency of the materials and the flow of the workbenches and the space inside. So, you know, you kind of see these benches that I put down. They're not just put down here by random. I've played Conan Exiles enough so that I kind of understand the workflow of crafting and what makes the most sense. You know, so typically you come in, like you've gone out to do some harvesting, you bring your horses over here following you, and you just bring, usually the horse has all the rock and ore and everything in it, and so you bring him in, and he comes over here and he's right there, and then you just dump off all that ore and rock and everything right here in the furnace, and then you can fire it up and get going. So that's just kind of there's these little things that I do for efficiency of the workflow of the crafting. And then of course you may have noticed in some of my videos how I build the entrance. There are no doors. I don't feel like there's a lot of need for doors in it playing single player. And even if you're doing the purge, you don't necessarily need the doors unless you're really trying to protect against the invaders in a lot of places. And the other thing about the purge is if you put down too many doors, then the purge will just kind of give up and you won't even get the treasure at the end. So yeah, I tend to build these more open spaces for doorways, typically at least one block wide, and then I don't use a door, and then that way you have enough space that you can run in and out even if your thrall is coming through. It also gives you more space for your horse coming in, and then of course these angled pieces here, what are they called? Left sloping, inverted. So you've got your sloping and your sloping inverted pieces. Those are just for a little extra, you know, improvement on the appearance. And then, so this one I built kind of to have an entrance that's too wide. Sandstone does not have, you know, unfortunately, compared to Flotsam. Flotsam has a gate frame. Sandstone does not have a gate frame, and it's not really even available here. If you look in the knowledge, you'll see there's gate frames for all of the other styles, and of course I have all the DLCs, but there's only a gate frame for Flotsam, and like I said, didn't really think Flotsam looks good in kind of a desert environment, so I didn't use it here. But sometimes I will, in my base builds, go ahead and use that frame, that gate frame across, and then it would be a full 3 across. And then, you know, so see here, of course, a little extra kind of wall wraparound, and then another set of pillars here. Just for the aesthetics, and this actually helps with the sandstorm. The sandstorm is more of a problem in this desert environment. Now, in other parts of Conan Exiles, kind of like right over here, all this, it tends to rain a lot. Some people don't like building bases over there because they don't like the rainy weather. And then, of course, you've got the highlands here, which is kind of sometimes it rains and sometimes it doesn't. And then there are pieces of the highlands that will get both the sandstorm and the rain. So like right in here, you'll get both at the same time. I think right around in here, you can get both, either at different times or at the same time. And so it kind of is. It's really it gets really dark, like dark as night, if you get both a rainstorm and the sandstorm at the same time. So I really don't like just this little tiny patch right here. I really don't like to build any kind of bases in there for that reason. But if you kind of go over here on this side of the highlands, kind of up in this area, then you won't get the sandstorm. So that's a nice place to build in. And I actually did build out another a base over there in that region we might go take a look at. But anyway, so if you're going to build in a place that has sandstorm, you at least want to kind of cover things up good enough so that you, you know, early on when you don't have the recipe for the sandstorm breathing mask, you can still work inside your workshop, crafting things without having to deal with damage from the sandstorm. So you definitely, you know, that's one of the reasons why this interior of this workshop is as big as it is. In other base builds, sometimes you'll see people put the workbenches outside, but really I don't recommend doing that in a desert environment where you can get the sandstorm. This setup is what I found over time is the kind of the most efficient in handling of materials. Now with the upgrades in Conan Exiles Enhanced, wherever your materials and resources are stored is less of a problem. much less of a problem. You can, you know, just have a chest and dump everything in the chest. But I, just as a matter of habit, I tend to store things in the places where they are crafted. I'm kind of changing, I'm transitioning, I'm still putting, you know, like some of the raw resources like wood and stone and sticks, just putting them in this chest as soon as I come in through the door. But, you know, at least historically, if what you had to do is you would have to run over to the tanner's table to get some leather, and then you'd have to take it over to the armorer's bench, or you take it to, you know, the blacksmith table. So I found that having these two things centrally located was the most efficient. That is, these two, the tanner's table and the furnace. It was most efficient for kind of working and moving your resources and materials around. And so then over on this side, it's just kind of organized in weapons and armor, and typically the dismantling bench is the place that you're putting weapons and armor that you find as loot, and you know, so you just kind of realize when you don't need a weapon anymore, you're throwing it in there. So there's kind of some synergy with those three things. This, you know, the saddler's work table is really rarely used. It's just kind of thrown out of the way for now. And then I've got the tinker's bench back here. Of course, it might also make sense to have the tinker's bench where the dismantling bench is. That might be an alternate workflow, or just at some point have I might move the tinker's bench a little bit closer over here, because typically you're making armor or you're making weapons, and then you're going over to the tinker's bench to add some extra buffs onto them. But at least right now I put the tinker's bench in this corner. It's kind of more out of the way. Takes up, it seemed like it fit better there. And then of course I've got the tannery over here. It kind of fits right in there. It is also used frequently enough, at least kind of with the way that Conan Exiles used to play. You'd have to run over here, get some leather, and take it to your workbenches and so on. So that's why that's placed over there. And then I kind of just ended up putting everything else on the other side of the base. So the, you know, artisan table, the carpenter's bench, the alchemy bench, the thaumaturgy bench, fireball cauldron, casting table over here as well. Even though there are some things that I use for armor, because I like to have kind of a combination of light and heavy, especially with the artisan's pants. Having that extra carry capacity is really nice. So it's a nice, you know, it's a nice combination for carrying, to have enough carry capacity available. But nonetheless, I still kind of threw the casting table over here for now. And that, I mean, who knows, at some point I might want to put that back over here. But yeah, so I've also got the stove and the preservation box right there. So it's just kind of, you know, everything besides weapons and armor is over on this side. And then the alchemy and thaumaturgy to me seem like they fit well together. Now, and then of course, the living space, the spawn point, the bed, is all upstairs. And so this is, you know, you can really spend a lot of time decorating and arranging in Conan Exiles, your base however you want. And so I have the Zamorian barkeeper just hanging out in here for now until I actually make a tavern, and then, you know, a few other things. I've got my treasures right over here next to the Conan statue. You know, a couple Stygian rugs, a few extra decorative things. There, of course, that's the big elk head that Freya was so excited about last time. She wanted me to count. She said, "Count the points on the elk." She was so excited about it. So, yeah, all right. So I went ahead and put the fireplace and the elk head there. Now, let's talk a little bit about structure of the base. The widest span that you can have in Conan Exiles is basically 8 of these blocks. So you'll see here 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's half the base. So it's 8 blocks wide, and for now, this base is only 6 blocks deep for now. But what's going to happen here is once you get up towards the end of the levels, you get to level 60, and then you learned Grandmaster Armorer and Grandmaster Weaponsmith and all that stuff, then the workbenches get to be really, really large. And there was kind of a bug. I don't know if it's been fixed. There was a bug where some armors could not be made in the top tier bench. Like some armor items still had to be made in this bench, and in that case you needed even more space because you needed space for the improved armorer's bench, and you also needed space for one of the Grandmaster armorer's benches. So that brings me to my next point, which is, like I mentioned, the 8 blocks is the widest span that you can have without some kind of an extra support beam coming down. You know, if you put an extra support beam coming down here, then it could be even wider here. But so I like to, just as a matter of efficiency and having the maximum amount of open space, typically I will make bases 8 blocks. One of the dimensions is 8 blocks at the widest. Now, after that, once you've got one of the dimensions at 8 blocks, then you can kind of extend this base and make it as deep as you want. And that's the way that this is designed. So this space here, I have 4 additional blocks which are kind of reserved for additional space to make crafting tables and whatnot. Once I get to the Grandmaster stuff, if I want to throw in an additional furnace, if I want other, who knows, some of the other workbenches towards, I'll show you here. I don't know if maybe I don't have them yet. Crafting stations, alchemy. So there are some, like some of the top tier alchemy stations are very large. So you'll need a lot of room for those. And so what I'd found is once the base starts to get deeper and deeper and deeper, then just as a matter of ease of entrance and exit, you need, and eventually I'll do this, I'll have some kind of an entrance, a doorway or something right here, and then all these benches will move into this space, and this space here will become walled. So for now there's just kind of a fence here to keep out the wildlife, but eventually this becomes a whole wall, and then the new entrance will be at this end. So once you do that, then you'll have more room on the second floor, and you have even more space to move, some of the other benches around. You can put your transportory stone up there on the second floor, or you can kind of adjust and have, if you really wanted. Now, I never saw much of a need to put the Wheel of Friendship inside the base, but you could potentially do that. And I would not recommend putting the Wheel of Friendship on the top floor. Definitely you want to have it somewhere on the bottom where you can drag in your new friends and just kind of drop them off here really quick, and drop them off, and then you can run inside and go in, because you don't really have to hang around the Wheel of Pain. You just kind of let your new friends work out and exercise on there, and then you go inside here and do whatever you need to do. So that is roughly, in a nutshell, rough overview of how I like to build bases. And there's still plenty of, lots of other room here in this area that you could, have even more things like the animal pens, I'm trying to remember what they're called. They're like the sacrificial, little sacrificial places where that you need for some of the sorcery stuff. And yeah, so you'll see here there's when you try to keep your base as compact as possible like this, then you have more space to put down altars of the different religions. And then I think there's the Circle of Power, which is a sorcery item that if you it tends to be best if you put that down on the ground. So the Circle of Power, this thing typically you would put down on the ground, because I think there is a recipe or a spell which destroys it, and that destruction sometimes has the side effect of destroying any foundation pieces that are underneath it. So you definitely want to put the Circle of Power somewhere kind of away from your base so that you don't damage any of the foundations if you want to execute that recipe. And then I'll probably talk about that more in a future video. Talk about exactly what the recipe is and what it does and all that good stuff. So that's the base. That's my approach to base building. It's some people might think that it's a little too blocky for them. They like more variety in the architecture, but again, I like to find a nice balance between all those factors. So if you're looking for somebody chill to hang out with, this is a good stream. Just as a reminder, subscribe, hit the like button. I do a little illustration as well. As you can see, make some cool characters for the games that I play. Try to have some fun, have a good time.